Hey everyone, I came on today to talk about the tight pelvic floor. And before I get into too much detail, I just want you to know that I think if you talk to any physio, pelvic health physio, or pelvic floor physical therapist, or women's health physical therapist, um, you'd hear us all say something slightly different about this. There's lots of different ways you can approach this. And so by no means am I telling you the right and the only way to think about this. It's just my perspective. Then, and I'd also welcome, like, on that note, I wanted Brittany and Tamara to be part of this community because I don't want you to think that what I say is the be all and end all. I want you to understand that we all look at this in a different way. Just like if you went to go to a counselor and they would, you would kind of jive with some people and you'd like the approach that they took. It's not right or wrong. It's all a different perspective. I know that many of you in this community are physical therapists, so I always welcome your feedback too. So share it. The other thing I wanted you to think about, let's say instead of coming thinking like, oh my gosh, I have this tense pelvic floor, what if you came to the clinic to see me and you're like, Melissa, I'm having headaches. And I said to you, okay, let's have an assessment. Let's take a look at your body. And I said, you know what is one of the big problems of why I think you're getting headaches is because your jaw muscles are quite tense. Okay. Would you kind of like throw in the towel and be like, oh my gosh, this is like the end of the world. How am I ever going to survive this? My diagnosis is tight jaw. No, you'd be like, oh, shoot, I know why I have a tight jaw. I have a tight jaw because I'm feeling stressed and I feel like I always have bad breath. So I'm chewing gum all the time, or I know I grind my teeth at night. So you would kind of be like, oh, why do I have a tight jaw in the first place? And I would say, you should think about the pelvic floor the same way. And that's exactly what I would think if someone came in to see me and either they came to me saying like, I have a tight pelvic floor, or they had symptoms of a tight pelvic floor or tense pelvic floor, then I would be wondering, like, I wonder why they have that. I want to kind of explain, first of all, just to set the tone or set the stage, because this is always what I like to do is like go down to the nuts and bolts of it. I want you to picture that every muscle in our body has to have access between like 0 and 10, a very relaxed position and a very tense position. And that all day long, it's working at different parts on that scale, if that makes sense. So we don't need to spend all the day relaxed. We don't need to spend all the day tense. There's always something in between, okay? Very similar to, let's say that I'm sitting here and I'm just talking, my arm muscles are, or say like my biceps are like at a 2 out of 10 because I'm just sitting here and they're resting on my lap. If you handed me a 5-pound weight, I would have to like my bicep would have to work a little bit harder. So maybe it goes up to like a 4. And then you switch my 5-pound weight for a 20-pound weight. It would have to go up to like a 6 or whatever. So just to make you understand, like that kind of, it's a scale. And then if you took that 20-pound weight away and I was just resting on my arm, it should go back to like a 2. So that's very much how the pelvic floor behaves all day. Okay. And it fits in with what's going on around us and with the rest of our body. So let's just explain kind of what happens during pregnancy. So I think of our body having to expand like a balloon. Okay. So when we get pregnant, I'm just going to show you here. Ooh, this is a crappy balloon. When we get pregnant, we grow. So the front of us grows, the sides of us grows. This is your pelvic floor. It's got like stretch kind of going through it. And it, like, obviously all these muscles have to respond to this change. So it's almost like a lot of these muscles get put on length, but you also have to understand muscles don't just kind of like flop. They still have to do their work, right? Remember the arm, they still have to do their work. So it doesn't mean that they're just floppy and loose. The pelvic floor especially kind of starts to work with a bit more tension because of all the extra weight going down through it and from the kind of laxity of the pelvis. So its support structure isn't as solid, if you will. So you're setting the stage before we even have a baby to have some change in our whole body, right? length in the whole abdomen everywhere. Pelvic floor is holding a little bit of tension, but it's also put on length, okay? Then we have a baby. Either we cut through the front of the abdomen, or we push a baby out the bottom of the balloon, the pelvic floor, and you're left with a system that's kind of like this, like a popped balloon. So not only do you have some injury to the front of the balloon or the bottom of the balloon, but you also have like a sense of floppiness everywhere else. So you remember everything's stretched so much. So you've got this like length through different places. Like some women, definitely my biggest issue postpartum was like diastasis. So it's like the front of my balloon stretched so much, but also our rib cage has to stretch. Like the whole body is changed. And so I would say that it feels different. Some areas are a little bit more lengthened, other areas are a little bit more tight because they're in panic mode, namely the pelvic floor. And so you're left with like this uncoordination. So tension can be left over for lots of different reasons, okay? And I think a lot of women picture that after they have a baby, their pelvic floor is flapping in the wind, okay? Like the balloon is just like totally floppy, and that's why they feel like they're weak. But then I think a lot of you are starting to notice, no, this isn't just weakness. This is almost like my pelvic floor is kind of like, what's going on? Like that whole balloon is like, what's going on? And that tension can feel like weakness, okay? So a lot of you are kind of like, what am I supposed to do about that? I feel like my pelvic floor always feels tight. And you'll know that because you might have persistent hemorrhoids. You might have anal fissures where you get little cuts in your anal tissue when you have poops. You might feel like you're leaking when you cough or sneeze or laugh or jump. Maybe it hurts to have sex. Maybe you feel kind of a fatigue or tension in your pelvic floor when you walk a long time or at the end of the day or when you do harder exercise. Those can all be symptoms of a tense pelvic floor. Just it doesn't mean that your pelvic floor is going to stay like a rock brick wall forever. It's just humming along at a higher beat. It's like it's living closer to 10 and it's tiring it out, right? So what are you supposed to do about that? I'm just going to run you all through an exercise, and I want you to do this. I would say if you can, I don't know how many of you are pregnant. If you're postpartum and you can tolerate lying on your stomach, maybe try lying on your stomach. You can try in child's pose. You can try on all fours. You can try, like I'm just leaning over a desk here, like this. So I just want you to kind of get into a position where your upper body's kind of supported and you feel like you can let your tummy go, the front of your balloon. And I want you to start by moving your balloon. So what I mean by that is I want you to use your breath. Your diaphragm, your breathing muscle works very closely with your pelvic floor and the entire balloon, okay? So we're gonna try to kind of like even out the forces or even out the relationship or the coordination with the balloon. Because sometimes the tension in the pelvic floor is because everything above it, like not feeling like it's coordinated. So the pelvic floor is like, whoa, I got to pick up the slack for this top of the balloon that's not doing its share. It's all connected. Okay, back to the exercise. I want you to breathe. And I want you to picture that you are a balloon. And I want you to tell me, where does your balloon feel stiff? Okay, so what I mean by that is you can feel the difference. Like if a brand new balloon, when you blow up a brand new balloon, it's hard, right? So you saw me first blow up that balloon. It was stiff. I had to work hard to blow up that balloon. But if I blew this balloon up like 10 times, it would start to get softer and softer. And I want you to tell me, when you breathe, do you feel softness in the walls of your balloon, or do you feel stiffness somewhere? So I want you to try this. I'm going to walk you through what I want you to do. So you're in that comfortable position, and I want you to inhale, and I want you to think like, do I feel stiffness in my rib cage on one side? Do I feel stiffness in my pelvic floor? Do I feel stiffness in my belly? Do I feel stiffness in my back? Because the whole thing is the balloon. Where that stiffness is, and I want you to notice actually what your pelvic floor is doing. Do you feel like it can open nicely? So try that with your breath. Think inhale, soften my pelvic floor. Exhale, you can do a little bit of a Kegel. Inhale, exhale, and feel what's going on. Then I want you to take note of where the areas of stiffness are. And I think a lot of you are going to feel that you don't breathe into like your shoulder blades. So I want you to notice when I breathe into my shoulder blades, like I soften the back of my balloon. Does my pelvic floor let go a little bit? And then exhale. If I inhale into my lower back, does that change the softness in my pelvic floor? Exhale. Think about breathing into your glutes, like into your butt cheeks and your anus. And exhale. You should start noticing that any part of the balloon that you relax or soften creates softness in your pelvic floor. Think of inhale, open the rib cage to the side. Exhale. Does your belly expand? Okay, and so you should notice that when you think of this, it allows your pelvic floor to let go better. So it allows your pelvic floor to get closer to zero, right? Because we think that if you feel like that's you, like, oh my gosh, my pelvic floor is humming at a higher beat, then we want to try to teach it what it feels like to be the opposite. I'm willing to bet that you'll feel that softening any area will help soften the pelvic floor. Now, you'd be surprised how many women I notice will be like, Melissa, I just feel like my left side's always tight. Maybe your left hip's always tight. Something on your left side's always giving you grief. Notice your breathing. Do you feel that your left side of maybe your rib cage doesn't feel like it opens? A lot of women will notice that tension is affecting the whole side of the balloon, right? Chicken or the egg kind of thing. But keep in mind that whole balloon is connected. Then I would start experimenting in different positions, because you'll notice that different positions have a different response, but we don't live our life in one position. So I would practice that in different positions. That should give you a good idea of what relax even feels like. Now, just keep in mind, relax is not a push. There's no part of like pushing the vagina open or pushing the anus open. It should feel soft and kind of like letting the jaw go, not forcing the jaw open. Okay. Then once you have an appreciation of what the relaxation feels like, I want you to notice then what it feels like to do all of it. Inhale, think of a nice, soft, open pelvic floor with your open balloon. Exhale with a Kegel. Inhale, nice, soft, open everywhere above the pelvic floor. Exhale with a Kegel. And you should notice that all of a sudden you have more movement. Next, let's move on to what's the reason that you have tension? Okay, because I know you're not walking around doing 7,000 Kegels in the day that it's just too tight. It's probably because of something that you're doing. So some of the reasons why you might have tension in your pelvic floor: do you have something that's uncomfortable? Because what does discomfort do to our muscles? Tenses them. Do you have back pain? Do you have like the feeling of a bladder infection? Do you have itchiness down there? Like if there's something down by your vagina that's uncomfortable, or scar tissue or something, address that, because it's gonna be really hard for your pelvic floor to feel like it'll let go if something's always bothering it. Okay, so think about that. I wrote some things down just so that I wouldn't get off track here. Notice do you suck your tummy in all the time? This is a big one. As women, we feel like we're always supposed to walk around with a sucked in tummy. But notice what happens when you tighten the front of the balloon. Notice what happens to the bottom of the balloon, or to everything. As soon as you tighten your tummy, do you feel your rib cage come in? Do you feel your pelvic floor come up? The whole balloon feels different, right? And so if you're walking around all the time with your belly sucked in, then that's probably a pretty good reason why your pelvic floor is humming at a higher beat. What other habits do you have? When I say habits, I mean, like that's one of them, obviously, like sucking your tummy in. But how do you breathe? Do you breathe really shallow? Because if you always breathe shallow, it might be harder for you to take deeper breaths when you need to. So are you ever getting expansion of your balloon? And you'll notice that the bigger or the more soft and open you make the balloon feel, the more that you'll feel like your pelvic floor relaxes. If you just take small breaths, it's like the balloon doesn't open as much, which doesn't allow the bottom to open as much. So if you never ever use a bigger breath, then I would say sometimes that it feels familiar, or sorry, not familiar to the pelvic floor as soon as you do try to. Okay. So I find like, of course, I don't walk around taking big breaths all day, but maybe because when I exercise, I'm needing to take bigger breaths. But if I haven't ever, like if I haven't practiced that, I would say sometimes it's harder to access it. So, but I do find like when I start to feel stressed, I feel my body feel tense, and that will make me take a few bigger breaths. Okay. Also, like things like toileting habits. Like when you go to the bathroom, do you notice that you're someone that always kind of like pushes your pee out or pushes your poop out? Think about how many times you go to the bathroom and how many times you would be creating tension at a time when you're not supposed to. What about just when you catch yourself in the car or sitting and nursing your baby, or I don't know, like brushing your teeth? Do you find yourself doing a Kegel all the time? Because again, that would be similar to me trying to figure out why your jaw was so tight. I'd be like, oh, do you notice yourself clenching your jaw all the time? You can't change something that you're not aware of. How do you stand and sit? One of you, I can't remember, I think it was Tia. I think it was Tia that asked about butt clenching. Butt clenching is a big reason why some women will find tension when they're sitting and standing. Think of sitting first. Sit in like a kind of a slouchy position and just notice what your pelvic floor feels like. Notice, can your balloon expand? It's hard to, right? It makes all the air kind of like come to the front. And I would say like the back doesn't expand very well. Whereas when you sit up nice and tall, and can you notice how you can expand your balloon better? And your pelvic floor lets go better. So someone that doesn't sit very often might not affect them, but someone that sits for work at a desk all day, maybe that's part of the reason that your pelvic floor is tense. Maybe it's how you're sitting, plus you're just sitting more than you're used to or whatever. Standing. This is one that we're culprits for as moms, period. And I'm not trying to say that you're going to walk around with perfect posture all the time, because that's like almost impossible. But notice when you stand with a bum tuck, how that makes your balloon function. Try to open your balloon. Can't, right? Feels like it won't expand here, won't expand here. Everything only expands here. Notice how it creates tension, okay? One of the things that I tell people to do to find a posture that's happier for them, don't overthink what exact angle your shoulders are at and your pelvis is at. Just breathe and try to find a breath. Try to find a position where your breath feels like a balloon, like it can expand everywhere. If you're standing like a butt clencher, or like in a butt clenching position, think about breathing into my lower back, breathing into my shoulder blades. And right away, I notice that it makes me stand a little bit better over my feet, and therefore let my pelvic floor relax a bit. So Tia, to answer your question, what to do about that, I honestly find like that is definitely a hard position. It's a hard habit to break. But I think if you can figure out, like if you can find, like play around with it, and if you can find a position that you feel stronger in, and your body feels like it almost like agrees with it more, your pelvic floor agrees with it more, then you have to start making it a little bit of a routine. Like, I catch myself in the grocery store and I have to think about my breathing. How can I get my breathing to get me back into a better position? And I would say that, again, we're not going to walk around in that position all the time. Like, it's just not, we're not one-dimensional people. We do so many postures. But if your butt tucking position is giving you grief for whatever reason, then I'd be looking at that. And I'm a big fan of telling people to put up stickers in their house to just get them to check in. And it might be something that you kind of have to give yourself a reminder to practice every day. I hope that answers your question. Does your core feel weak? So that's where the balloon comes in. If you feel like your whole core is weak, what do you think that that's doing to the balloon? Maybe you feel that, me, for example, I have had lots of stretching through the front of my balloon because of diastasis. Like that was my kind of biggest nemesis postpartum. But can you see that that might be why I suffer from a pelvic floor that wants to live tense all the time? Um, I can't really, like, I can't, how do I say this? I don't feel like the pelvic floor tension holds me back all day, but it's partly because I know my body is different since having a baby, and I kind of have to respect my balloon. Okay. So like, for example, I feel like my pelvic floor bothers me most with running. My issue is not leaking. It would be like pelvic tension and like hip tension after running. And I know it's because of like an issue with my balloon at the front and with my body feeling strong when I run. So I have to do prep work before I run to get like better movement in my pelvic floor, because I know that because my balloon feels maybe a little bit more vulnerable or not as like strong through the front, that my pelvic floor is trying to help it, right? So I make sure before I go out, I do like wake up my core, um, so that it feels like it can be more ready for me to run. And I do relaxation of my pelvic floor. And I'm talking like 5 or 10 minutes before I go running, but I feel like I'm setting up like my balloon that has fault and helping it succeed when I'm testing it. I don't do regular pelvic floor relaxation in the day, but what I do is meditation because the reason I have tension, and this is why you also, this leads to my next point of why you might have a persistent tension in your pelvic floor, stress. As a new mom, you know that what I mean, even just like as a mom in general, as someone that works, as someone like in life in general, like we have stress. Everyone feels stress in a different way. And your pelvic floor is not unique to that. So I'm sure there's something else that you feel carries tension when you feel stressed. I find that stress definitely makes my pelvic floor feel like it's working harder, but it's not alone. I mean, I feel like I get heart palpitations. I don't feel like I sleep well at night. I feel like my mind races. It's a whole body thing for me. And so I have found that meditation is a good way to treat my pelvic floor because it treats my entire nervous system. And so that would be one of the big things that whenever someone says like, oh my gosh, I have tension. And once I start talking with them, like, but I have tension everywhere. I'm like, exactly. So don't think so much about one muscle. Think about a global body and what the whole thing, like you guys have a stressful life as mothers. And so any way that you can calm your nervous system, you're going to calm your pelvic floor. Like I said, it's different for everybody. Some people are like, I just need like a 10-minute nap a day, or I need to get out and walk in the woods because I feel like it calms me down. I really like meditation, and I get it. It doesn't feel like there's time to do it in the day, but I started during COVID. I was doing it before. I felt like I fell out of the habit. COVID was a bit stressful for a lot of different reasons. And I started again. My husband and I both make sure that it's done in the day, like 10 minutes. And oh my gosh, it's like we get addicted to it because it just makes us feel like our whole body, our whole life feels better when our nervous system feels like it's not always in fight or flight. So that's like a huge piece of advice that I would love for you to take out of this. I started paying, I think it's like $10 a month for this thing called 10% Happier. And you can do like meditation courses and everything. And it's actually like, I've really, really enjoyed it. And I know there's other options out there. Yes, those are the big ones that I would say you should think about and write all of those down. Oh yeah, here's Julia. I would say write all of those down. And hi, Julia. She can't hear me yet. I would say write all of those down. I'm gonna kind of list them out for you again. Hi, Julia.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
I
Sorry.
was No, you're fine. I wanted to list a couple things, and then when you watch this back, you'll know what I'm talking about. So that something feels comfortable down in your vagina. What your habits are, like what am I doing? Like what in the day is making me walk around with tension? Like when do I notice it? Okay, like how do I stand and sit, and how does that feel? Do I find myself like pulling in my ribs or pulling in my tummy often in the day? And like, what is that related to? Do I feel weakness somewhere? And do I feel stress? You do not have to deal with all those every single day. I say pick like one a day, and just say, okay, today I'm going to look at this and I'm going to see kind of like what my habits are. And I am going to see like what I'm doing that's contributing to that. And I think that once you figure that out, it'll help give you an idea of how to address it. Anyways, I hope that helps everybody. Feel free to kind of let me know if there's questions that come out of that. And I would love to know how you find that exercise, like thinking of the balloon, and whether or not that helps. Hey, Julia.
Hi.
I know you've missed everything I've said, so you're gonna have to. You'll be like, I have no idea what Melissa's talking about right now.
Yeah.
But that's okay. I think if you watch it back later, it'll give you an idea.
Yeah.
Any specific questions relating to the topic? I was just talking today about like the tense pelvic floor, the pelvic floor that feels tight.
The only question I had was to how do you tell if it is tight?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, you went to go see a physio recently.
Yeah, just last week.
And did she do an assessment?
Yes, she did.
And she told you, what did she tell you?
So she said that yeah, I need to be like pulling up my pelvic floor rather than just tightening it.
Okay. Did she tell you anything about like whether or not she felt like there was tension in there? And did you feel a sense of that?
No, she didn't.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, I don't really know. I don't feel like I can ever feel my pelvic floor at all. Um, does that make sense?
Totally. Like, would you say that it feels like numb, or you feel like you don't know the area? Like,
Yeah, like I don't know
no
the
sense,
area.
no sensation. And do you ever feel like any like symptoms of tension? Like, do you ever have pain with anything, like intercourse or like anything like that? Do you do you have?
No pain except for just like that lower back.
Does it feel like? Do you feel tension when you have intercourse?
No,
Did you ever work with a therapist before you had your baby, like during pregnancy?
no, I didn't, and I wish I had.
Whatever. I'm not saying I'm just curious to know if it feels different, like if you felt like there was a difference in how you felt your pelvic floor. So some things are hard to say without actually doing an assessment, and I think that's what Tamara and I were kind of hinting at when we were commenting on your post in the
Yeah.
community, is that like I always describe that muscles have to have access between 0 and 10, and very infrequently will you see that the pelvic floor is just strictly weak. Like usually there's something, especially with like you're not totally fresh postpartum now, is that you should feel that yes, your strength starts improving. There are times when there can be like absolutely there's different things that happen with like such a stretch in our fascia, in our nerves and everything, that sometimes the nerves have a hard time firing as well, which might be why you feel like almost like a loss of sensation, a lack of awareness, and maybe a true weakness. But lots of times, I think this is what Tamara and I were hinting at, is that lots of times it will be hanging out at a little bit of a higher tension, and it feels like you're weak because there's nowhere to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
And
Totally.
it feels weak because it doesn't feel like much of a climb, but it's always because it's kind of like humming at a higher tune.
Yeah.
So tell me what you picture when you're trying to tighten your pelvic floor. Like what do you
Well,
visualize?
so she's basically said the same thing you said, like picture you've got a blueberry and pulling it up. But when I try and do that, like last night, I was like, notice that my eyes close when I try and do it. And then I think I'm sucking in my tummy,
Yes.
which I know is not great.
Try right now. Can you lay on your back and put your feet up? Laurel, do you have like a yoga block really handy?
I
Or
do.
even just some pillows. Like get into like bridge position and put a yoga block or some pillows underneath your pelvis
Okay.
so that your pelvis is high. And you're going to let gravity help you here.
Yep.
And I just want you to breathe.
Okay.
And when you watch this video back, you'll kind of, I go through it in more detail, but I want you to picture a balloon when you breathe, and I want you to see, does my chest expand? Okay, when I breathe in, does my chest expand? Like soft. Does it feel soft, like a balloon opening? Does my belly expand when I inhale? I'm just talking about inhale right now. Does my rib cage expand out to the side? Does my pelvic floor feel like it expands down there? Does my like shoulder blades area, like my upper back or my mid back, feel like it expands? My low back. First of all, do you feel all that when you breathe?
I only feel my tummy
Yes. Okay.
expand.
So that will be one of the big things I want you to practice. And I don't want you to be thinking of like pushing it open. You're thinking of like softness. I always tell people to picture a balloon that's brand new and you're blowing it up and it's really stiff versus a balloon that's been blown up 10 times and it's like soft. I want you to make all the walls of your balloon soft. Okay. And then do you feel a sensation of your pelvic floor kind of going, oh,
No, I don't, because I think, I'm not
okay.
softening everything.
Okay.
So,
So practice this, but I want you to practice like, so visualize this right now. So yes, everything goes soft. And now keep everything soft and just bring up the bottom up. And I don't care if it's 1 out of 10 on the effort scale. Like I'd rather it be like very low effort, but that all the other walls stay soft for now while you do your Kegel and practice this. Inhale, everything expands in a soft way. Exhale, it stays soft and just the bottom comes up. And just kind of go with this a couple times and tell me if you feel the difference. And your pelvis is up to try to get gravity to help you.
yeah,
Yeah,
I can feel the difference there. It's
perfect.
quite good to like just focus on that.
That's where I would start, is super basic. And you'd be surprised, like watch this video back, and you'll notice like I talk about like the people that feel like their pelvic floor won't let go or won't do its share. Usually it's because something above it is kind of compressing, and it's like, oh my gosh, because it is all part of like this pressurized unit. Does that make sense? And if you
Yeah.
bring the pressure on above, this guy has to work hard. Otherwise, this pressure is going to make you pee and poop all day. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
And so usually it is from something above,
Stop.
creating like a bit of, and the thing is the pelvic floor is not this super big powerful muscle. It's probably moves a lot less than you think. I always use these grand gestures, but it doesn't move that much. And so don't try too hard. Start by taking away the other walls of the balloon for now, and
Yeah.
just focus on that one until you're like, I got it. And then like, I think that position might be good for you to start with, or kind of like laying on your back with your feet up on the couch or something like that, so that you can
Yeah.
kind of get gravity off.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've- I am going to see her again in 5 weeks, so it'll give me a lot of time to practice before then.
Yeah. And that's the other thing, like I was trying to get at in answering the question, is that rarely is it just a pelvic floor issue. The pelvic floor is part of like this bigger group of everything in the body. And so the pelvic floor is never like usually the problem in isolation. Usually there's a reason why it's either working harder than it needs to, which makes the tension, or it's like lagging behind a little bit. So um, I would say its tendency, unless there's been some sort of significant trauma and like issue with the nerve supplying the muscle, usually the pelvic floor takes on quite a bit more work than maybe it's supposed to, which is why it starts having issues. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, thank you so
You're
much.
very welcome. I'm just gonna be mindful of time because I always want to keep these short and sweet. So I am going to end this recording now. And um, do you know what, Julia? I always appreciate that you put yourself out there for the benefit of everybody else. But like, please do try this and then let us know how you find it. Okay?
Yeah, I will do. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Have a good day, okay?
You too.
Okay, bye.
Bye.